Once again, professional wrestling from Memorial Auditorium in Buffalo. Staged by the Buffalo Wrestling Club under the promotional auspices of Pedro Martinez. In the ring are Dan Miller gesticulating to the crowd, and Adrien Baillargeon, who was demonstrating his good right hand to referee Joe Moscato as the two boys are getting pre-bout instructions. This is a one-fall, 30-minute time limit bout. And Dan Miller, youngest of the three Miller brothers, 255 pounds, Columbus, Ohio, shakes hands with Adrien Baillargeon, third of six wrestling Baillargeon. And that was Dan, or that is Dan, that's going through all the motions. And you know, those of you who have seen the Millers in action, that they are troublemakers, and Dan, although he's the youngest, is just as big a troublemaker as his older brothers. Take a good look at that hold, the arm lock applied by Dan Miller. It probably will be about the only legitimate wrestling hold that he'll show all night long, although he's plenty capable. That's Adrien Baillargeon demonstrating his strength as he breaks out of the arm lock and applies one on Dan Miller himself. And not to be outdone, Dan is going to try the same stunt. Sheer strength. He's trying to break out of it, but he can't quite do it, and he's back in the throes of the arm lock and taken to the mat. The two wrestlers in the center of the ring now, representing a total of 9 members of their families who are actively engaged in professional wrestling. And I am told on good authority that there is still another Miller who is in the Army at the moment, but soon due for his discharge papers, and he will join the family, and that will make, between the Baillargeons and the Millers, a total of 10. And Adrien Baillargeon is going to have to start all over again. The fingers interlock. Miller massages the kidneys, and he unloads, this time with an open hand. He asks the judge, and the judge agrees, and it was open hand, all right, and therefore perfectly legal, but nonetheless painful to Adrien Baillargeon. Nothing daunted, Baillargeon, in the throes of a grapevine, is trying to get out through sheer strength. That time, Miller added a new wrinkle, used the trunks to overbalance Baillargeon, and Adrien, in order to stay upright, had to give up thoughts of breaking the hold momentarily. Here we go again. He's going to try to meet his hands. He does. There goes the trunk pull again. Now he walks Dan Miller over to the ropes. Joe Moscato will have no alternative but to order a break, which is accomplished by Miller reluctantly and with a knee lift to the face. Baillargeon trying to shake off the effects of that grapevine hold that was applied and held for a couple of minutes by Dan Miller. Now Nelson. Now there are a number of ways of breaking this. See which way Baillargeon will use, or maybe he's got a wrinkle of his own. Some wrestlers try to slip right out like greased pigs. That's another way Baillargeon used it. Now let's see if Miller can get out of it. All Baillargeon did was to come down hard on Miller's arms and try to jar him loose. He did, but Miller hasn't been able to do it, although he just tried then. Once again, Dan Miller tries it and gets his ears rocked for his pains. Finally heads for the ropes. Moscato calls for a break. Baillargeon does. And Dan Miller holds his aching head and neck. There's the knee lift, and Dan Miller is on Queer Street. Those right hands are coming in from Lower Main Street, but they're landing. There's a pile driver. Oh, my aching head. Dan Miller is holding his ears much like a man without protection on a 20 below zero day would hold them, only not for the same reason. Those ears will never be the same again. I imagine Dan Miller would like to be almost any place but where he is. An arm stretch, a kick to the chest. Baillargeon asks the crowd, what'll I do? Shall I give him the works? Miller is literally begging for mercy. He begs the crowd, then he begs Baillargeon. And at this moment, I don't think he knows quite what's going to happen to him next. If the crowd has his way, there'll be no mercy. Like the old Roman gladiatorial combat. Thumbs up means the gladiator lives, the vanquished lives, thumbs down, and that's all, brother. This crowd would give Miller thumbs down. There's the flying mare. Mr. Miller has lost all interest in the proceedings on the far side of the ring. Adrien Baillargeon monkey flips him. The arm stretch heaves him into the ropes. Meets Dan with a forearm smash and another one. And now he's going to hang up Brother Miller in the ropes. Joe Moscato says no. And young Dan Miller is saved from a public hanging, I think. Picks him up, slams him down. Going to try it again. Miller grabs the top strand. Joe Moscato breaks him, overbalances Baillargeon. Miller's aboard. 1, 2, 3. The fall for Dan Miller over Adrien Baillargeon. And you've got a really funny situation where the victor looks more like the vanquished, and the vanquished looks more like the victor. And Joe Moscato was inadvertently responsible for that, for an attempting to break Miller's hold on the ropes. He overbalanced Baillargeon, and Baillargeon fell backwards. Miller aboard for the press, the count of 3. In a moment, we'll have the official decision. Announcer Manny Whites, and this one you can bet is not going to be popular with anyone but Dan Miller and probably his two brothers. You can hear the crowd. I think Manny White said 11:23, time of the fall. Dan Miller, 255 pounds, youngest of the wrestling